Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live in this room, and we're live on Facebook as well. I'd like to welcome all of you here together with me this morning. Thank you very much for joining us for this breakfast. Let's start with the following. Hi, Paul. Hi, Beth. Well, we've got 5 people watching already online. Anybody who's watching, if you're enjoying it, please do share it. The more people share it, the more people get to see it. There's already 10 people watching online. I'm glad you've all come and joined us for this today. Ian's watching from next to me. I'm glad you're watching me that way, Ian. It's always nice to know that there's one person that finds it more interesting seeing it on his mobile phone.
It says you're coming to turn around.
I know, but you get these people, sometimes you go watch something, an amazing phenomenon, and instead of people watching the actual phenomenon, what they do is they take out their mobile phone and I want to remember this. And you can't even see what's going on. They're videoing it. You can't even see it properly because they're too busy on their phones watching it via their phones. So it's much nicer to be here. Thank you very much for all coming. I'd like to start with an appeal. This is not an appeal for money. I don't like appealing for money in general. But the Bagel Breakfast has been sponsored very kindly. The first 6 Bagel Breakfasts have been sponsored very kindly anonymously. The fellow has, though, mentioned to me, and quite rightly, he said one of the reasons that he wanted to sponsor this Bagel Breakfast and one of the reasons that he wanted people to come is because he wants people actually to come to Shachris as well. We are struggling during the week sometimes with Shachris, and it'd be really nice if people would come and join the minyan and help us out. Even if you come just one day a week, it makes a big difference. The difference between 9 and 10 is the difference between having a minyan and not having a minyan. So you might be the one person that makes a difference. Please, if you can come. I know people have work commitments, other commitments, but if you can come one day a week, it'd be very appreciated. Those of you watching online, if you can come as well, it would be appreciated. Others as well. Okay, right. Let me start with the following. I do want to ask the question. I'm going to keep my eye on the time. We're hoping to finish for 9:30. I'm going to try to keep very much to what I've said, that we're going to finish 9:30. Let me ask the question. Just to get a feel of the room, and you can comment on this live if you want to as well. We'll see if I can see your comments. I'll mention them. What is the feeling that people have in the room about this? What's the general consensus when we're speaking about it? We recently had the story of the Hasidim, I don't know if it was Hasidim, it was Haredim, whatever it was, that was sitting on a flight, or not sitting on a flight, as you'll hear in a minute, that were seated next to women that decided that they didn't want to sit next to those women, and because they didn't want to sit next to those women, they went and they complained and they wanted another seat. Nobody was willing to change seats with them. They said, well, if nobody's willing to change seat with us, we're not willing to sit down. It became a whole altercation. Part of what they did also, it seems that they weren't only into using the pun. Huh? Sorry, someone saying. Okay, no, I thought somebody would make a comment. One of the other things that came up is that people also said that then they decided they wanted to plug their phone in to charge it. So there was some kind of panel by the stewardesses. This is not your doctor's office or your dentist. This is a plane. Please be careful when you're plugging things in. It doesn't work so easily. So that they, and there was a feeling. A lot of people had a feeling that this was just wrong. Is anybody here that that has a comfortable feeling with this whole thing? Yeah.
The problem is the way I see it is
yes.
The way the media portray it, it makes it look as if it's a Chillul Hashem.
Okay.
Because that's how the media see it.
Right.
But it is.
Right.
But
okay.
the problem is the way it's portrayed in the media.
Okay. Is it something? Let's go. Is it something
you don't see and you don't necessarily hear all the facts? And all,
right.
you just see it.
Well, okay, we'll have to discuss whether the facts of the Chillul Hashem are correct or not. The idea of, is it incorrect what they're doing? I'd like to just go through this a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is go through some halacha to get an idea and to get a feel of, where this is coming from. I'm not going to give you a final ruling that's going to be in tandem with what they're doing, but at least to get the halacha of it. Number one, as far as halacha is concerned, you look in halacha, there's a machlokes in halacha. There are those that are of the opinion that touching a woman is an Isur D'Oraisa, is forbidden under the forbidden. It says in the Torah, when it comes to forbidden relationship, lo sikravu legalos erva, you should not come close to uncover somebody else's nakedness. That is the exact translation of that word. And therefore, when it comes to that, there are more things that are included within this beyond the scope of just cohabiting. It doesn't mean, when it says it doesn't mean that a man and a woman cannot, a man and a woman who is estranged to him, somebody else's wife, or somebody who is a relative. It doesn't only mean that he's not allowed to cohabit with her, but there are other things that are not allowed within them. Hugging, kissing. One of the things is touching, although touching is a discussion within the poskim, whether touching is de'oraisa, touching is rabbanon. The difference it makes is, for doctors, other things, the bottom line is that we say, after all is said and done, that there's a difference between touching for lust purposes versus touching for constructive purpose. So, for example, if you have a doctor is going to be touching a woman, hopefully only for constructive purpose. Never take advantage of a woman. That's wrong. Even if you're a medical professional, it's still wrong, right? You cannot, that's just wrong. And therefore, what the halacha says is, if you're touching for purposes of pleasure, enjoyment, there will be a Nisa D'Oraisa, there will be a Torah prohibition, whereas if you're touching for other reasons, if you're touching for something constructive, it might move down to Nisa D'Rabbanon, only rabbinic, which would mean that if there was a constructive purpose to it, for example, in the case of medical professionals, then that will be allowed. In other cases, and then the whole discussion becomes about shaking hands, etc., etc. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but there is that bit to keep in mind. On top of that, there's another thing that's to be kept in mind, and that is, it's not only forbidden to touch a woman to receive pleasure, but it is also la halacha forbidden to stare, gawk, etc. at a woman to receive pleasure. That is not only in inappropriate places, but even staring at a woman at any part of her to receive pleasure is also considered forbidden. That's just, so shouldn't there be a big distinction between what is done behind closed doors as opposed to public interaction that fits with local culture? Maybe. That's if the question I was just asked, should there be a distinction between what's behind closed doors as opposed to public interaction that fills into local culture? It depends. We'll have to discuss it. It depends where it comes in halacha. So it's a question of like, are you wearing a yarmulke? Is that, does that go against local culture? For some people, that goes against local culture. For some people, that's okay. Some people, that's not okay. But it depends how far up it is, the pecking order. Local culture, they go to the pub and they eat whatever pies they have. So does local culture dictate that you should go out with your friends and have non-kosher food? That's not what it dictates. You have to go ahead and you'll have to see where do we draw the distinction. And that's going to be part of the discussion that we're going to have. Beyond that, there's, as we said, there's the idea of touching. There's also the idea of looking at women in an inappropriate way. Therefore, yes, go on.
If you get a situation where a woman is very, very distressed, maybe we just had a very traumatic situation.
Yes.
And they need a little bit of company, maybe.
Yes.
Is that allowed or not?
Is that allowed? So it depends. It depends what your job is within it. It's not a very, very straightforward thing. Okay. If there's somebody else that can do it, then somebody else should do it. If there's nobody else that's there that can do it, so then there might be a room for that if it's really, really necessary. But again, every situation has to be evaluated. Let's just see. Right, Johnny, we won't deal with that question now. So beyond that now comes the chumrah. Okay, the chumrah is that some people will then go a step further. Say, not only can I not touch a woman, not only can I not look at a woman for pleasure, I don't want to put myself in the situation where that might happen. And I think this is where the whole thing on airplanes comes from. That everybody will agree already is a chumrah. That you're sitting next to somebody on an airplane. There is no intent, I hope, there's no intent of the person sitting next to you to touch their seatmates. If there is, that's just harassment. Whether you're Jewish, whether you're from, whether you're not from, whether you're not Jewish, to touch the lady next to you for enjoyment is harassment. That's sexual harassment. And we can all call a spade a spade. You cannot touch the person sitting next to you just because you feel like it. So therefore, you're going to sit next to this lady, and what you're going to have to do is you're going to confine yourself to your space to make sure, A, not to be touching her, B, not to be looking at her. So some Hasidim will turn around, or some Charedim will turn around and will say, why should I put myself through that situation? Why should I go ahead and sit like this in a seat for the entire flight and try to make myself uncomfortable the entire flight, when really what I could do is I could move somewhere else and bring myself out of that situation. That is basically what's going on. There's a lot of comments coming through over here. I think there's so much going on that I need to say. I don't know if I'll be able to deal with all the comments. David, David Mintz just said, make sure to book for the Purim Suda, and if you want, you can have a woman sitting next to you. There's no extra charge for that. Thank you, David. We appreciate it. We always like David's humor. Okay.
The bottom line surely is, if you're not bothered, you don't travel on public transport.
Okay, so we're going to have to discuss that.
Because particularly on a plane, you can't change the rules.
There's a simple way also. On a plane, if you assume most planes are 3 and 3, if you are traveling...
But to Israel, the plane's 232, 343, you know, there's lots of different
If you are travelling, if you've got a from man travelling with his wife, it's dead easy, as long as they've
but you can't always travel with your wife. I have to go for business somewhere. It's very inconvenient. Like, you know, if every time I have to go somewhere, I have to say, wife, come with me. We have to go, I have to go to Israel. It doesn't make sense.
No, what I'm saying is, when they're travelling with wife, it's easy, because you're always going to have 2, and as long as you booked a seat, you can always
That's
swap.
a different, again, but that it's not always the case. You have to go ahead and you have to realize that in most cases, it is inconvenient, it doesn't work. We have to go somewhere. You can't just say, everywhere I'm going to go, I'm going to bring my wife with me. Right? Yeah, Stephen.
What about obeying the laws of the land?
So we're going to get, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to all that. I've not finished yet. You know, I'm starting. I just want to set things up. I want to start, and then I want to explain where it comes from. Okay? Now, having said all of that, right, I believe very strongly, and I've spoken yesterday to 1 or 2 people that are Hasidish that agree with this, so this is not across the board, that changing seats remains a chumrah, remains a stringency, and not something that you need to do to follow the letter of the law. If it was something you need to do to follow the letter of the law, you would see a lot of musical chairs going on the plane. Not only the 5 or 10 people that are doing it, but I would imagine if you go on a Monarch flight, an EasyJet flight to Tel Aviv, you will find not 5 or 10 from people, but 50 or 70 from people. Could you imagine the havoc it would take if 70 from people started changing around their seats? So not everybody does it. It is a chumrah. And what I want to discuss is, on the one hand, whether you can change, and on the other hand, obviously, I agree with you 100%, Stephen, and I agree with everybody else's sentiment, that if there is nobody there that's willing to change with you, or if you're standing up and endangering the people on the flight by standing up, you have no right to stand up and say, I'm not sitting down until you swap my chair. There is no excuse for that, and I'm not going to stand up here and make an excuse for it. So if you expected I was going to get up and defend that, but I'm not defending it. Don't defend the indefensible. If you cannot say, however... Pardon?
No. GP45 my pocket.
There you go. All right, there we go. But you're not in charge. He's in charge of that. You're just in charge of the money, I thought. Officially, he's my boss. Is that right? Yeah. Sorry.
Who pays the wages though?
I don't know. That's never. Whoever pays the wages, the end of the day, it ends in my bank account.
I pay the wages.
Right. I'm very thankful. Elliot, we're very thankful to you. Please keep coming to our bagel breakfast. And my expenses. Okay. I want to go through 1 or 2 things because I want to really clarify this. Now that we've said straight out that there's no excuse for not sitting down at the time, there are 2 things that there are a few things I want to go through. Number 1, I want to make it very, very clear that people who are asking to move seats on a plane are not doing so because they're misogynistic. I think it's very often seen as, and compared to, in the same way, in the 1950s, 40s, etc., and even in the 60s, people would sit down next to black African Americans on the bus and say, you go to the back, and it was about racism. This is not about racism. It is not about feeling that the woman next to me is inferior and does not deserve to sit next to me. Okay? I'd like to make that very clear because this has to do with halacha. And the reason people are looking to move is not because I cannot sit next to this inferior being next to me. God forbid. That has nothing to do with it. It's nothing further from the truth. Rather, people want to be comfortable within themselves and comfortable within halacha about how they go about their things, and therefore they would prefer to sit next to somebody else. I've told this story here before at Shalosh Shudas, but I'll tell it again because there's plenty of people that weren't at Shalosh Shudas. I once sat down on my seat in my plane, and I was looking up, and I see this frum fellow, and he's playing musical chair. I want to sit here, I want to sit there, and I said to myself, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm not getting up, I'm not making a Chil Hashem, I'm not doing that. And it was after a long time in yeshiva, and I was very tired, and I went to sleep. And I woke up to find a woman next to me breastfeeding. Right? You know, and I woke up, I looked to my left, and there was a woman who was exposed, and I just turned around, and I went back to sleep, and that was it. And I don't know what this woman was doing, but it seems that she probably like marathon fed throughout the entire flight. Because any time I woke up, this woman was exposed. But like the whole time. It was a 3.5-hour flight, and that's what happened. And I said to myself, okay, God, I get the point. You know, like, you know, if some people want to move seats, I can understand that also, right? But then, again, this woman has a right to feed her child. I'm not saying she didn't have a right to feed her child. What happened then when she fed her child was I turned around and I tried to look away. But there are people that will turn around and say, why should I sit next to somebody who wants to feed their child and make her uncomfortable? Instead, let me move somebody somewhere else where she can feed her child and there'll be somebody next to her that won't feel as uncomfortable as I will, and I'll be somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with that. If they were saying, and maybe some people are saying this, which is wrong, if people turn around and say, I don't sit next to women because women are or women are no good, or there's something wrong with women, then that's wrong. And we should call it wrong right away. But if people are not sitting next to women because they want to be more comfortable, they don't want to have to confine themselves to that tiny little space on Monarch that they give you anyway. There's not enough room for you. Forget about, like, you know, you're almost always on the other person's lap, whether you want to or you don't. So I said, let me at least, you know, let me sit next to somebody where I feel comfortable. So that's the first point to make. The second thing, because as we said, there is a famous story that Rabbi Twersky tells. Rabbi Twersky is a famous, world-famous psychiatrist who runs an addiction clinic in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he is sought after internationally as an expert not only on Jewish things, but also on things of psychiatry. He's an expert in addiction, and he's a very, very clever fellow. And Rabbi Twersky was once sitting on public transportation, I don't know if it was a bus or train, whatever it was, and a lady came over to him and started berating him in Yiddish and said to him, you're an embarrassment, how dare you dress like that, what's wrong with you, we live in the 20th century. I guess she didn't realize this guy was a world-famous psychiatrist. But she's going on and on and on about how he's, but she didn't want to yell at him in English, because she thought it was wrong. So in Yiddish, thinking that he was Hasidish, she started yelling at this fellow, because he is Hasidish, started yelling at this fellow about how dare he dress like that, and how come he doesn't move on with the times. Rabbi Twersky then just looked at her and he says, excuse me? I'm not sure what you just said. I'm Amish. I'm from Pennsylvania. The Amish live in Pennsylvania. He goes, I'm Amish. I didn't understand what you were saying. And then the lady turns out, she says, I was trying to say how wonderful it is that I think that you retain your traditions that you've been keeping for the last 200-300 years, not willing to change, not going along with things like that. And she went on and praising, praising this lady. On and on and on. And at one point or another, when she finished the whole tirade, he switched to Yiddish and he says, you're a wicked, evil person. If I was Jewish, you're berating me for the fact that I kept on to my traditions and I'm wearing the things that my great-grandparents wore in Russia. That's not okay. If I'm Amish, it is okay. Yeah? We do have a double standard. I'll give you another example of a double standard. That often bothers me, and I know we're saying this live on Facebook, and maybe some people will take exception to this, but I feel that sometimes there's a lack of respect that people have for our shul, for example. Why do people park right outside our shul? If they know it's wrong to park outside a shul on Shabbos. When the same people, if they were going to a mosque, would never refuse to take off their shoes. If they went into a church and were asked to take off their head covering, they would never say, I'm wearing my head covering. How dare you dictate to me what I do? I'm wearing my shoes. No, you wouldn't. You walk in somebody else's place of worship, there's a certain respect that they're willing to give other people, and for some reason we don't give our own places of worship the same respect that we would give if we went somewhere else. Bringing mobile phones. People bring mobile phones over here. There's signs everywhere saying there's mobile phones. I understand you use a mobile phone on Shabbos. I'm not judging you for using a mobile phone on Shabbos. But why do you have to bring it to shul? Or why do you have to pull it out in shul? If the same people...
The fact is, some of these people, they don't realise it's wrong. They truly do not know that you shouldn't come in the car or bring their phone.
Pardon?
There'll be some people that have their phones with them don't realise that you're not supposed to do it.
I think everybody knows you cannot pull a phone out on Shabbos in a shul.
No.
In a shul.
I don't think you're right.
No.
There's signs all over the shul. Please don't use your mobile phone.
But people don't. They might just think, well, that's just honestly.
When I walk past people in shul that have pulled out their phone, they always go back in the pockets. Yeah, people do realize. Or people come, they don't pull them out in the Hilton suite. People come to the library to use their phone because they know I cannot use the phone in public because it's not acceptable in shul. I will go to private space. But the bottom line is, you wouldn't go to private space in a church and do something that you knew was against the church rules. So why are you going to private space that's against the shul rules and going against it? We don't have the same respect sometimes for the things that are closer to us than we have for the things that are not as close. That's number one, right? Okay? Point number one. Point number two that I would make is, I read an article, when I was doing some research on this, I read an article by a fellow, and this is a guy who's a rabbi in America. I think he's a conservative or a former rabbi from, judging by the comments that he was making. And he said the following. He said, this is my seat. And I got the seat and I'm not moving. And a lot of people feel, this is my seat and I'm not moving. Now, if you've paid for a seat, that's one thing. But let me just, a straw poll. I don't know. How many people do you actually pay for seats? What? No, you pay for a specific seat, not for a seat. Of course, you pay for a seat on the plane. Yeah. Sometimes, very rarely, not that many people. Yeah, I see. Every time. Yeah. Certain people want the certain seat. If you want a seat with a bit more room, leg room, whatever, you pay the extra money. Fine. Yeah.
And you get a free cushion.
But having looked around, we have 20 people in the room. And of the 20 people in the room, there's only 5 people that pay for a seat. The other 15 don't pay for a seat. Okay? So you give them whatever seat. It's not that you've chosen the seat and paid for the seat. If you've chosen the seat and paid for the seat, then that's your seat. And I understand that. But you've not. But I don't know how many of you this has happened to. Has this happened to you? Because it's happened to me many times. You get on a plane, and I see there's a father and a child sitting over there, and right next to me is the mother and the other child. Right? Has that happened? Pardon? They also didn't say, right?
They paid for the seats.
They didn't pay for the seats. They paid for the seats like that. No. Let me reiterate. If the 2 children were sitting with the wife over there and the father was sitting in the front, I can understand he paid for the seats. But if he's taking another kid, they've often been just split up that way, right? How many of us, I've done this many times, have gone over either to the father or to the mother and said, look, your spouse is sitting right next to me. I don't need to sit next to your spouse. I think it works a lot better if you sit next to your spouse and I go sit somewhere else. I don't care. Right? I'm not going to say that, but that was very funny. I'm not going to point you out. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wait, let me finish the point. I'll come to you, Edward. Some people will pay not to sit next to the spouse, but that's okay. We're not going to mention that. But in general, the guy's like, oh, why? But I've given up my seat for other people, and I'm sure most people here would be happy to give up. If you paid for your seat again, that's something else. But you'd be happy to give up your seat for somebody else that wants to sit next to their spouse to put the family back together again. So we see that you're not so bought into your seat. People turn around, this is my seat. Until there's something that you're willing to change. If you're willing to change your seat for something, that means that you're not that pedantic about this being your seat. It's just a question of, does it fit my criteria for me to move? Or does it not fit my criteria for me to move? These 2 people sitting together, it's nicer that this couple should be able to sit together. So therefore, I would go ahead and I would be willing to swap my seat. This guy doesn't want to sit to women. I disagree with that. I'm not moving. Yeah? But you're not so married to your seat. So if another guy wants the favor, what's the big deal? People make such a fuss of it. It's my seat. Well, you wouldn't have been so particular about your seat if it was for something that you agreed with. That's number 2. Right? Number 3. I'm sorry, we don't have enough time. Sorry, Matt, you've joined too late. You'll see it in the end. What does he say? I would like to gently commit. And then sit in it. Oh, God. Okay. I don't even want to. I'm not going to say that, Foster. Stuart, you mentioned that, and that's my point. Stuart just made a comment on here. Okay.
Tell them to turn it off.
Turn the turn off, right? Yeah. Right, we've now reached 21 watching, by the way, online. So this is quite 22. Okay. The last point I'm going to make about this, and then, and then we'll just give you a bit more Torah, and then we'll want to finish. And that is, I go to Simchas quite often. Went to one last night. I go to other Simchas. When I go to Simchas, what ends up happening often is I get to a table, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this is what generally happens. When I get to a table, everyone looks at, oh, the rabbi's sitting at our table. And then what happens? Musical chairs. Yeah? Because I'm not always the first one to be there. Very rarely am I the first one to be anywhere. But I'm definitely not the first one to be at a simcha. So I get there, and everybody sat down already, and nobody knows who's sitting at the table. And then there are 2 seats left, and between the 2 seats, there's a woman on one side, a woman on the other side. And I show up at the table. Do you know what happens? I don't even say anything. I've never made a point. What happens? They get up and change seats. And it's a pain to change your seats because you have to start changing crockery and cups and things. But everybody changes without even having asked, why do they change? That's exactly what it is. Right? Exactly what I've written down over here. There's a certain respect. No, I'm sorry to say that. I'm not here to be about people. Yeah. And therefore, the point is, again, if there is a certain inbuilt respect, we'd be happy to move for somebody else. It's just that the other person on the other end, if we don't respect them, then we turn around and we say, how dare you ask me to move? I don't even respect you. And that's a shame. Right? And so the point I want to make, I'm not going to say everything that I was going to say because I'm running out of time. But Purim is all about unity. Haman comes to Achashverosh and he says to Achashverosh, Yeshna Amechot, there's a nation that are spread out amongst all the other nations. And what Haman is saying with that, if you look in the Gemara and you look in the Mefarshim, they explain that these people are disjointed. These people they don't care for each other, they don't do anything for each other, they're all over the world, they don't really believe in each other. And the entire Purim is about undoing that. Mishlach manos. You know what we do? We take food parcels and we pass it on to other people to show them our appreciation and our love for them. We give matanos evyonim. There are people that cannot afford, that are poor. We will be happy to help you out. We will give them donations. You read the Megillah to remind you. You have a Suda coming together again, The whole Purim, a lot of the mitzvahs of Purim is to counteract that idea that we are spread apart amongst the nations, that we are not a unified people. We're trying to go ahead and we're trying to say, no, we are a unified people. We are one people. And I received an email this morning. It was very interesting to see that. There was a fellow who writes these emails, and a very interesting rabbi from America. And he said he was in Israel, and he's with his son. There's a Haredi rabbi, and he's with his son, who's a decorated IDF veteran. And they were filling up on petrol, and suddenly they heard a big bang, and there was an accident. And this fellow who's now part of Hatzalah ran to the accident, and he said it was amazing to see. It was amazing to watch the different stripes of Jew, whether there were non-religious Jews, and there were Hasidim, and there were Charedim, and there were modern Orthodox Jews. They all came together, because whenever there's Hatzalah call, especially in Israel, there's a lot of people that converge, and there were 2 people. There was a secular Russian lady with an Ethiopian man whose cars had crashed together. Immediately, they all started working, started helping each other out. Baruch Hashem, there was no great damage. But he says, I was watching from afar, and I was looking at this display of unity, of how you can have secular, modern Orthodox, Dati Leumi, very from Hasidish, all together for the right reasons. And that's really what we need to look at. On the one hand, you're right. Should somebody get up and stand on the laurels and say, I am not sitting down because I want this seat, and you can't dictate to other people, and you cannot endanger anybody else. There's no excuse for it. However, having said all of that, I do believe, for religious reasons, if a person does want to move, you might not agree with him, and I'm not asking you to keep what he keeps. But why don't we respect each other? You see, for me, for respect, they will move. So respect somebody else. If it's no sweat off your back, what's the big deal? If you're sitting next to your wife, fine. You don't want to give her the seat next to your wife. I understand that. You want to sit specific place. You've bought a seat. I understand that as well. But in many cases, you're not bought into that seat. That's not specifically your seat that you need. You just happen to be sitting there. So somebody else will be more comfortable in your seat. As long as they ask you nicely, why don't we give them that respect? Why don't we say, okay, you want to sit here? I don't mind sitting next to a woman. I'll swap the seat with you. Because I'll swap for family reasons, and I'll swap for respect reasons, and I don't think that, everybody's not allowed to keep their own things. So don't impose anything on anybody else. But if we respected each other a little bit more, this whole issue wouldn't exist. We wouldn't get so head up about our seats, and rather just give them up, because it's not such a big deal in the end of the day. Thank you. Okay, any questions, comments?
It's just the way it's done, Rabbi.
I think it is the way it's done. I do agree with that.
And aviation have certain rules that when your seat is allocated to you, got a anything happens, knowing that you have to sit in that seat when it takes off. Right? That is the rule of the aviation.
I've seen them change. I've seen the cabin crew.
You shouldn't.
I've seen the cabin crew.
You can do it after.
I've seen the cabin crew move people, even just for convenience, not even from people. I've seen the cabin crew move people before the flight. If the aviation rules said they wouldn't be allowed to move,
then they
the
write it
cabin crew.
down, but they can't have everybody swapping around seats before the plane went to take off. Sit down in your seat and then ask the air hostess nicely.
If people aren't
could
sitting
I
yet, it could be a
possibly
very, the whole thing could be really, really quick. I believe if people were more willing, the whole thing would be very quick. Everybody would sit down and it will go very, very quickly. The point is, would you swap? No. Will you swap? No. Will you swap? No. You swap? No. Oh, there's nobody to swap with me. I'm not sitting down. Then becomes a whole to-do. If the first person turned around and says, I didn't pay for the seat, I don't care which seat it is, will you swap? Yes. If everybody turned around and said yes, everybody be sitting within the next 5 minutes. That's really how it would work. And you know, specifically on a plane like Monarch or EasyJet, where they're not serving you food anyway, so there's not like, I need to find the frum guy, or I need to find the Jewish guy to see if I can find him his kosher meal. What difference does it make? They don't care what you're saying as long as you're on the
They
plane.
have a finite and very limited time
They do have.
for their takeoffs.
I agree with that, and they almost always miss it, and I find it very frustrating as well. And that people should, you know, if we're going to miss the takeoff, they keep on saying, will you please sit down, we're going to miss our takeoff slot. And in general, I find it's not only people that are swapping seats. Everybody, they're just very, very lackadaisical about sitting down, and I find that's wrong. People should sit down, and people should go ahead and let the plane take off. Yeah, Jeff, I'll come to you in a minute. Yeah, Edward.
Well, two things. First of all, you mentioned the word respect.
Yes.
Why shouldn't some of these people have respect for the other people on the plane who want to get to a certain destination by a certain time?
Yeah,
That's
I agree with
number
that.
one. And number two, surely the whole question that you're talking about is all in a person's mind. The fact is that they don't necessarily have to sit next to somebody
Right.
about the touching business. My wife went into a Jewish shop on Friday,
Right,
was going to hand over a £10 note to the person serving her,
right,
and that person would not take that £10 note.
right.
He said, put it on the table.
There are Hasidim that have that as a chumrah,
But
they
they
keep
should
that.
not be even serving in that shop if it's in their mind that something's going to happen by handing over that money.
Nothing's going to happen. I don't think they're worried about what's going to happen. This is a certain. There are a lot of Hasidim that have this. They don't pass anything over to women. In general, between husbands and wives during the time of nida, that applies, and the Hasidim that take that one step further and say that they won't do that to any other woman who's not their wife at any point in time.
Don't work in a shop where you
Well, then you have to. Yeah, but I didn't employ the person. Then you go and have the conversation with the shop owner. You know, it's not for me to defend them. Then you go to the shop owner and say, if you have somebody working in your shop and you have a problem with that, I can't defend it. You go speak to the shop owner and see what the shop owner has to say about it. But this person needs to feed his family, and this is what he's doing. And you know, I don't think it's the end of the world to put down the £10 note. But I understand that your wife feels sort of discriminated against. On the other hand, also.
All these questions.
Yeah.
It's all in an individual's mind.
Okay, but what's wrong with an individual mind?
There's nothing wrong with it, but the situation about sitting next to somebody
Right.
is such that whatever may or may not go on, all you're doing really, in the majority of cases, you might talk to that person. And what's wrong with that?
So they don't want to put themselves in that situation. They don't speak to women either. Hasidim don't speak to women just for no purpose. They don't do that because that's part of the way they live.
2017.
And therefore what?
Is that because
They don't have to speak to a strange woman because we live in 2017.
Is that because?
Do you know what I mean?
Is that because if they speak to a woman that is sexually excited?
I don't know why it is. I'm not sure why it is. They don't speak to women in general. You know, you shouldn't. As far as Allah is concerned, they see it in a way that you don't, as much as possible, you keep away from contact with other women. That's the bottom line. You know, whether you agree with it, pardon?
That's their choice.
That's fine, but that's their choice. But why can't we respect that choice?
Yeah, I agree with
What, I have to sit there and say you have to talk to me? No, he doesn't want to talk to me. Fine, he's not. He doesn't want. It's not that he doesn't want to talk to you. He won't talk to any woman. He's not singled you out and said you're ugly. I don't want to talk to you. No matter who you are, he won't talk to you. You know, and give him that respect. He doesn't have to speak to you. He doesn't have to have that conversation with you. Debbie, last comment, and then we're going to bench.
Yeah, it's just something that happens to me quite often when I walk to shul, which I've learned to live with.
Pardon? Say again.
Something happens to me quite often when I'm walking to shul on Shabbat.
Yeah.
Where not Wolfersons, where a shul not far from here.
Yes.
Quite often the men
Yes.
walk onto the road around
Yes.
me.
Yes.
I find it quite disturbing, really. I mean, I can understand understand, I try and understand why they're doing it,
Right.
but they won't share the pavement with me.
It depends how tight the pavement is.
No, it's normal pavement.
Really?
And she's not that big, Rabbi.
No, I didn't say that. It was one of my, I didn't say that. You said that. I don't make comments.
It's just backs onto what we're discussing. I feel
Right.
it's
I don't know why.
right.
I'm not sure why they come off the pavement. I don't know.
It's not.
I've never come off the pavement for anybody.
If I said good Shabbos, they're looking down as well.
Right.
People, is that a lack of respect, or should I accept it? Or
No,
not?
just accept it. They're not trying to disrespect you because they do it to any. You know, that's the way they function. They're not doing it personally. That's just the way they do it. But I think, you know, if that's the way they do it, so then let's just accept the fact the way they do it. And, you know,
But it's just,
they're not trying. I understand, but they're not trying to be awkward. They're not trying to be
no, it's
uncomfortable
what
with you.
they, but
That's
again,
just the
like,
way they
it's
function.
something in their head rather than.
Fine, but that's just the way they function. We don't have to, you know, we're not going to change the world, so let's just let them be the way they are, because they're not trying to show you any disrespect. They're just trying to, you know. Okay, they might not realize it, but they don't. I'm guaranteeing that they don't mean to hurt you. I guarantee that. Thank you everybody for watching live. Thank you everybody for coming. Please remember, we do need people to come to the meeting for shul, and now we're going to bench.